Okay, do you want the good news or the bad news first? Bad news. Hello, welcome back. It is an absolutely glorious day today. Back working on the Audi A6, and what we really want to do today is to work out why this engine is so down on power. So this thing is basically driving like a naturally aspirated engine, and as ever, you guys have been in the comments giving me all kinds of advice and suggestions. Now, when I plugged this into the computer and read the fault codes, the errors I was getting were related to the injector number 3 as the needle lift sensor, and I thought that that was probably going to be what was wrong with this car. But as I have been reliably informed in the comments, Lukey or Lucky the boss and Yanis, and I'm not going to pronounce his surname because I'm going to butcher it, they seem to be quite clued up on these engines in particular. This is the engine code AKE. They both seem to reckon that that needle lift sensor on that injector won't actually be causing a loss of power. Now, I did buy a replacement injector for that, because I often don't get to see these comments before I buy the parts, you know, after releasing a video, and there's a delay. I have bought a second-hand part. It ended up being £68, but now I'm not entirely sure if I'm even going to bother fitting it, because if it isn't going to solve my problem, then quite frankly, there's no point. So what Lucky or Lukey and Yanis suggested is that more than likely we've got some kind of boost leak. So these are notorious for getting boost leak on the turbo hoses and maybe even vacuum leak. And if it's not that, then you can see I've already started to just dismantle some of these bits here because I wanted part numbers. But you have what's called here, this black one is called an N75 valve, and it's some kind of pressure boost. It controls the boost, right? Let's just say that. So these can go. So I think the first thing to do, actually, before I even go anywhere, is, as Moody K 1979 in the comments of the last video suggested, the best thing to do right now is to just clear all of the codes, especially if it's had a flat battery at some point. Clear all the codes and then kind of start again. And then I think what we'll do is we're going to see if we've got a boost leak, and we're going to do it the cheap and easy way. You know, it's supposed to be 29 degrees today. Let's just clear these codes out. Right, so that's done. So let's start the car up. Go on, go on. Oh. So now's probably a good time to mention about the difficulty this car has getting started. You saw it there. So again, Moody K 1979 reckons, as did a couple of other people, glow plugs. Most people think glow plugs, right, when a diesel car has trouble starting, and that's because if you saw that glow plug light there, it came on and went off really quickly. So people were saying that. But another problem as well that is quite common with these, and it's happened to a couple of people, so Malcolm Down mentioned it, as well as Lukey the boss again, you can get air into the fuel system, kind of gets past some, well, let's have a look. So I believe this is the that's the diesel pump there, and there's actually a torque screw in there, and it has a really small O-ring on it, and apparently that O-ring can just get all crusty and hard over time, and air leaks in past the filter basically into the fuel system, and that can cause a leak. But also people are saying, you know, you might need to just change out your actual fuel filter, which is this here, or check these connections just to see if air is getting into the system, and that's what might be causing a hard start. Now, there is actually a hose here, and as I'm looking at it now, I can't see any air bubbles in there. So maybe it is just glow plugs that need doing. And then another thing as well, someone going by the name of Star Brown or Asterix Brown. With these cars now, you may as well leave the engine cover off of them, because the electronics in this pump can basically, this can get so hot now, they get frail, the electronics in here. So all the heat that is generated from the engine can make that go kaput. And having the cover on top of the engine is only going to exacerbate the problems. And when you rev it, there's no smoke coming out of the exhaust. So that's all good. Let's see now what this is saying. The only error I'm getting now is the needle lift sensor. So the other errors have disappeared. And the other errors, 2 of them were just electrical. The dash isn't communicating with its mum or something. I mean, the car, that's not going to fix, the car's not going to be fixed. It's still going to be like a naturally aspirated engine. So I did see when doing a load of research on Google that quite often when you've got some of these problems, if you've got a boost leak, or if you've got the N75 valve in particular that I said that might be an issue, sometimes when they go, it doesn't always throw an error code. So you can just drive around with basically an NA car with no help from the computer, which kind of looks like what might be going on with me. Let's see if we can find a boost leak. Well, firstly, I just popped off the heat shield that was on there just so I can get just a really nice easy look around down the back there. So I've just done a little visual check of all of these vacuum line, but everything is, I can't see like any obvious kind of tears or holes or anything. So all of these hoses look okay on the surface. And so what you'd normally do is you take off the hose coming out of the turbo, you pressurize the system, and people pump smoke through it, and then you can see where the smoke's leaking out of. I think it's just called a smoke test. Great name. But there's another way of doing it as well, and because it's going to be blowing air out because we've gone past the turbo, you should just be able to spray some soapy water on it. Well, you'll just see the bubbles starting to froth. So I'm going to kind of do that at various places around the engine and just see if that gives me anything to work with. I mean, hopefully it's just a hose that needs replacing or a clip that needs tightening. We can but dream. If you've been watching my videos for any length of time, you know it's never as easy as that though. I don't know what that horrendous noise just was. I've sprayed some soapy water all around. I got down there into the intercooler inlet, and I've sprayed soapy water down there. Had to take off some of the air box there. I can't see anything. I've come around here, I've sprayed stuff over the intake manifold here, these connectors, the one that comes out of the intercooler, and I'm not getting anything. So it doesn't look like on the surface it's a boost leak. So I got my trusty helper in the car. I'm not actually allowed to show her because she's been sunbathing and she's wearing a bikini. Wait! No. Right, okay, now you give it a bit of a rev. No, wait, go on then. Go on then. So the actuator looks like it's actuating. That doesn't look like it's stuck. There was a horrible clunking noise when she revved it coming from down there. Ugh. Okay, so I'm not entirely sure now what is what is going on. So the actuator looks as though it's actuating, because you should be able to see that rod with the yellow thing on it. That's going up and down when the engine revs. To me, just on the surface, that rules out the actuator. And then maybe it's just, I don't know, maybe is this the EGR valve? I think that's the EGR. That goes into the N75 too. So maybe the N75 is broken if it controls both of these. So I've just been doing a bit of research on EGR valves. It can cause a loss of performance. So that's one thing that it might be. But before I'd start removing the EGR valve or anything, I'm just going to check one more time for codes. Now that it was running and it was being revved a little bit, I can confirm that we now have two codes. The first one is still that needle lift sensor for the injector, and the second one now is 01375, pressure build up time at rear too long, valves for engine mounting. That's come back, and that's it, that's all we've got. And that's, I think on these things they have kind of like electronically controlled hydraulic engine mounts, and they can basically just go rock hard, and I think that's what that is. So I'm not concerned about that at all. I think what I'll do now is I'm going to pull the EGR off, because as I've just been reading on here, they can get loads of soot built up in them, and I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to test it because it's a vacuum controlled valve, and I don't have like a vacuum pump or anything. Oh. Ow. How am I going to get in there? How? Tell me how. Certainly not with that spanner. It's just not possible. You can't get in there. What? No. Oh no. Just lost some kind of screw down there. So I just had a proper check at how you're supposed to actually remove this EGR valve, and you're supposed to remove this starter cat, remove part of this whole intake manifold. So I think you have to remove this front part, remove this part, just to get to these bolts that are right down there underneath. You just can't get under there with a spanner or anything to remove those two bolts to take the EGR valve off, which is completely bonkers if you ask me, especially for a part that's known for failing so much. So I don't want to have to do any of that. So the next best thing obviously is to actually just test to see if the EGR valve is working, but I don't have a vacuum pump. I have just ordered one, but it's not going to be here until tomorrow. So in the meantime then, I think what I'm going to do is, I kind of did cheat in advance, I'm not going to lie to you, because there's so many people online were saying this valve goes kaput really easily, and this does control that EGR valve. I did in advance order a replacement. Hopefully this works, and this is just kind of just push a few hoses on and plug it in. I feel like I'm due a little bit of luck as well in between this car and the Merc. Let's just make this nice and easy. One part, in, out, shake it all about, car drives nicely. Oh. I'm going to get a farmer tan to top it off as well, aren't I? Okay, so that's now, that new valve is in. I suppose the only way now really to know, isn't it, is to start it up and just take it up and down the driveway and see if it fixed any of that power problem. Okay, so I just quickly drove it down my driveway. You can put your foot down and it's absolutely exactly the same. Feels naturally aspirated. I mean, zero happens until you get to 3000 RPM, and even then it's like just a tiny bit of something. And then what I did, I came back, unplugged the mass airflow sensor, took it for another spin, and there was absolutely no difference. The no engine lights came on, the car felt exactly the same, the idle was the same, but there was no big differences unplugging the MAF. So there's now a part of me wondering, well, maybe it's the MAF. Now the MAF wasn't throwing an error, but now that I've unplugged it, it is throwing an error, and I do have a code for it. So I'm wondering if it is that. I think I might just chuck a new MAF in it. I actually have one, and I mean, and just see what happens. I'm not getting any error codes for anything really, so that's what's making this quite difficult. I got my vacuum tester coming tomorrow, so it could still be the valve, and it could still be that actual wastegate on the turbo, the actuator on there. Even though you can see it moving up and down, it might still be sticking a bit. So there's still further to go. We've got further to go, and I am losing all of the fluid through my head. I had to bring a towel out. It's just getting ridiculous, to be quite frank with you. I don't know how anyone's coping. Hey, no, take 17. Hiya. Oh, come on. So this air filter's a bit migging. So this is the new MAF going in. I mean, it's just a generic prime line, never heard of them. This car doesn't have to be amazing, running on brand spanking new Bosch parts. It just needs to work enough for the short amount of time that I want to drive it. So this is what's going in. Right, that shiny new piece is in. I mean, let's at least just try and start the car now and see what happens, and then I'll take it for another jaunt down the driveway there. I mean, that started up a lot quicker, but that's probably more to do with the fact that the engine's actually warm. Okay, and also I just stuck my head in here one more time. There's air bubbles. There's air in the fuel, for sure, for absolute sure. That might actually be why the car's having trouble starting. But now I'm thinking it may be worth definitely removing this EGR valve, because then I can get down the side of this diesel pump and see if it's that O-ring that's actually letting air in. Okay, do you want the good news or the bad news first? Bad news, I might keel over at any point. There's no fluid left in my body. But the good news, and I do mean the really good news, is that this car just drove normally. Ladies and gentlemen, I think the problem in this car was a faulty MAF sensor, because yeah, it drives normally. You put your foot down, little bit of hesitation, you know, like from an old turbo diesel, then whoop, and it feels punchy. I think that was it. I think it was just a MAF sensor. So I paid £49 for that sensor. How amazing is that? It literally drove so nicely. Obviously I can't take it for a proper spin out on the roads because it's currently sawn, which for people outside the UK, it doesn't have road tax, so it's not allowed to be on the road. And it also doesn't have an MOT, which is our annual kind of standard roadworthiness test. It has neither of those things, so I can't actually go and drive it on the public highways, but I think it's fixed. That's amazing. But why wasn't I getting an error? I wonder why. So it doesn't look like it's any of the solenoid, it wasn't the actuator, that all looks fine. It looks like I've got a perfectly working car. This calls for a celebration, quite frankly. Oh. No, wait, it gets even better. I just want to say a special thank you. David Foreman, Sam Lumsden, Colin Thomas, Psycho63, Paul Burgess, Smithy of Smithy's Track Mini fame, Richard Collins, Mark Hall, and Brumad. Each one of those people has either hit that thanks button just below this video and donated some money, or they've used the link in the description and they've bought me a beer. Sometimes some of these people have bought me like multiple beers, and I just want to say how much I appreciate that. That is, just to donate money like that to a random bloke on the internet making car videos it is mental. Let's just be honest, it's completely bonkers, but I appreciate it so much, and it genuinely does help. And you know, I often do spend the money actually on beer and car parts. I have spent some of that money on car parts, I won't lie to you. But thank you, gents and gentesses. If Psycho69 is a woman, or Brumad could well be a female. I've just spilt all of this chocolate all in the cart. That is not good. Oh my god. There were other people that have bought me beers in the past, but I've already said thank you to those people. Now look, it doesn't mean that we're out of the woods yet on this car. That could only be a temporary fix, or there could be other issues yet that I haven't discovered, because like I say, I haven't given this a good razz down the road. You know, got it up to speed, driven it for an hour. There could still be many other things wrong with it. The majority of the power is back, and it does beg the question, was this £500 Audi A6 Quattro parked up because of a £40 part? I don't know. But if it is, then I might have got myself a good deal here. How you doing? You look like you're in pain. What you done your back?
Sciatica, yeah.
Sciatica. How have you done that?
I lost a path today for the first time.
Did you? Where was I? I was probably just jabbering on about something or another, wasn't I? The reason I haven't serviced it or spent a load of money doing that sort of stuff just yet is because I want to send this now to get an MOT, and then I'll use the MOT to tell me properly what's going on, because I don't want to start putting new oil in, air filter, fuel filter, pollen filter, gearbox oil, diff. You know, I don't want to start spending money on all of that. If I take it for an MOT and they tell me it needs like £1,000 worth of welding doing underneath or something like that. And now I'm sitting here, maybe it's the alcohol, but I'm just thinking, wouldn't it be really cool if you put, say, I don't know, maybe a 4.2 litre Audi V8 in this wagon, kept the diesel badges on it and ran it as a hell of a sleeper? I'm just saying, imagine how cool a project that would be. I mean, if you know anyone that has a 4.2 litre V8 just sitting around in an Audi they're not using, then let me know. Right, so it's the next day now. A little bit cooler, so that's nice. Before we get into things, I need your help. I want to name this car, but I want you guys to help choose the name. So I always name my cars, usually named after girls, you know, with the exception of Bob, but that was kind of out of my hands because that was actually my neighbour that named Bob the Mini, if you remember. What I want you to do, write in the comments, give this car a name, but we do have some ground rules, and the ground rules are that the name has to be relevant. It can't just be something completely random. It has to be relevant to kind of this old German barge, this old oil burning four-wheel drive hunk of loveliness. So, you know, it's an old joke now, you know, Audi McBoatface, like, that was funny, but let's keep it relevant. And if you're going to give it a human name, I prefer girls' names, because I do usually consider my cars to be girls, you know, she's a beauty. And then what I'll do is I'm going to pick the top 3 from the comments, and I'll run a poll here on YouTube, and you guys can then vote for which is the best name for this car. The first thing I want to do though is I've just had this turn up. It is a Chinese cheapo, but it was like the only one that I could get next day. So this is my vacuum pump thinger. You know, I'm pretty sure that I fixed the issue with the MAF. So you might be asking, why am I doing this? I'm doing this because the tool turned up and I don't want it to go to waste. And also I've never tested an EGR valve, so I thought I'd just give it a go and see if I can manage it. Just get this old hose off. Okay, so I've given it a bit of a pump, and is it holding? It's going down ever so slightly. Yeah, look, can you see that? Very slowly, gradually ticking down. That isn't holding vacuum. Now, obviously, I worry with tools like this, because it was like the cheapo, like the real cheapo one, that the tool's dodgy, but I don't think it could be that dodgy, could it? Okay, so I think I've diagnosed another thing then. So, amazing. So, MAF, air in the fuel system, and a dodgy EGR valve. Right, I did just start questioning the tool, because I know it's the cheapest one they had. Don't forget, I only bought the cheapest tool because I needed it for this video. So what I did is I just shoved a hose clamp with a screwdriver in the end over one end, and then I've hose clamped that end, and it is actually holding vacuum when you do it like that. So I'm just going to redo it basically, but this time I'm going to hose clamp it onto the EGR valve, because I've just noticed it didn't have a clamp on it. I don't know if that's going to actually affect anything, so let me just recreate this on the EGR and then see if that produces a different result. I've put a hose clip on that end there, and so basically I'm just trying to rule out that the tool isn't gammy, and the dial's still going down. I'm pretty sure that means that the EGR actually is bad. Don't trust, verify. Right, so I've jacked her up on this side, and I mean, do you reckon they can come back around, these discs? I mean, when I did drive it up and down the driveway, there's almost no brakes. I don't know if that's just because this surface is a bit gammy, or do I just need to replace these straight away? Let me know what you reckon, because they didn't feel very efficient, but I don't know if this might bite again after a little bit of use. On my finger there, obviously you can see that's a load of grease. I don't know if you can see that in there, but that drive shaft boot has actually split and it's letting a load of grease out, so I imagine that's going to be a failure. However, you know, I gave this, when the wheel was on, I did give this a bit of a shake, and I didn't feel, you know, any wheel bearings or like the tie rods needed replacing or anything like that. All the other boots look okay. I mean, these arms up there look like they might have been replaced at some point. I think the lowers they've definitely been replaced if you look at the condition of everything else. I mean, that looks largely okay, apart from that drive shaft boot, which yeah, that's not gonna get very far, but it doesn't look too bad. And it's a similar story on the driver's side here as well. Get the wheel a bit of a wobble, didn't seem to do anything there. The boot on this side is fine on the drive shaft, and that looks fairly new actually. Yeah, the trouble is, you know me, I don't know 100% what's going on. I mean, the rubbers up there certainly look a little bit old, they're a little bit cracked, so whether that'll get pulled, or I mean, the springs look okay, and then you've got just a load of this kind of rust in here. Well, I mean, that's dirt, but any rust you can see in there is just surface rust. I did poke my head, not actually underneath, but I did lay down and have a quick gander underneath, and on both sides the car looks to be in okay condition. Doesn't look like there's loads of, you know, structural rust, if you like. There's a lot of surface rust, like on the exhaust and kind of on the floor a little bit, but it's not too much of a problem. I have just noticed that though. So I just had a look on both of the rears as well. I won't bore you with that, and it's largely the same story, to be honest. The whole car kind of looks the same. Now, apparently, it's not actually the rust itself that will be an MOT failure, as quite a few of you pointed out in the previous video. It's actually just the fact that they're sharp edges. So you can gaffer tape, pretty much just gaffer tape all this in, and that'll pass an MOT as long as there's no hard edges on the show. I mean, I am skeptical, but I'm going to do it, and then we'll know for sure one way or another that way when I take it for an MOT, if that's an old wives' tale or whether that's actually true. And the second thing I want to do, just so I don't get turned away at the door, is I'm going to just fix up these headlights. And so what I've done is I've bought this Maguire's One Step Headlight Restoration Plus kit. This has got amazing reviews, and a viewer of the channel, GH, who helped me a lot with the Mini stuff, I saw him use this on Instagram yesterday and it looked amazing, so he gave me a couple of extra tips for it. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to try and buff up these headlights, see if I can bring them back. Right, so I can confirm that this stuff is basically magic. Take a look at that. I've done this one over here. Look at the difference. I spent about 10 minutes on that. I think I probably ended up, I think I reapplied some more of the liquid stuff. What is it? In the bottle, the stuff. You know what I mean. Probably applied it about 4 times, and then you get this little attachment that you stick on your drill and you just go over it. And so I did that for about 10 minutes, and so look at that. I mean, it's not 100%, don't get me wrong, but when you look at it like that, I mean, there's that murky yellow and then that which is about 90% clear. That stuff's absolutely incredible. Link in the description to where you can get that. I mean, I highly recommend it. You could probably get way better if you were to start wet sanding it and go all in, but you know me, that's that's good enough for now. All right, there you go, there's those 2 done. And then I've also taped up all that rust. I mean, there aren't any sharp edges anymore. You can run your hand across it quite nicely, so we'll see what the MOT tester has to say about that, and we'll work out once and for all whether you can actually get away with doing that, if it's the sharp edges or if they just laugh at me and say get that thing out of here. Don't forget to put in the comments what you want to see this car named as, and we'll run that poll and we'll name the car. And please do me a massive favour, if you've watched more than one of my videos and you're enjoying them, please hit subscribe. It's just here, it takes half a second. If you could do it, it actually helps me out massively. But I think, you know what, that was quite a good run, so see you in the next one.